If you are working with AI agents within n8n, then you might be familiar with the very common problem that they don't have web access. And in this video, I would like to show you a couple of ways how you can actually give web access to your AI agents, which is something that is quite important because, in regards to reducing hallucinations and getting accurate results, this might be necessary for the project that you're building. So let's give this a quick test how this looks like out of the box. So I have a very simple flow, as you can see, which has a chat trigger node at the very start, and then I have integrated an AI agent. Within that AI agent, I only added a system message down here, which just says you are a helpful research assistant. When asked a question by the user, make sure to always conduct an online research before responding. You have access to an online research tool to do that. And I'm going to close this again, and I have connected this right now with a native OpenAI model, right? So what I have done is that I connected this basically to the chat model connector. Then I'm looking for OpenAI and then for the according chat model. And this is what I just opened up here. And I'm going to select the credentials, and the model that I'm going to use is now GPT-5 mini. It doesn't really matter yet what model we were using. And these are for now the only settings that I'm going to conduct. I'm going to close this, and I have researched an article that might be appropriate, and I found this one, which is quite interesting, which was on Hacker News, and it's titled "How I Write Software with LLMs." And this guy basically lists a couple of tools also that he has built. And my question is going to be, what tools did this author build? And I'm going to provide it with the according link, right? So this is the use case that we are dealing with. I'm going to jump back into n8n, and now I am actually asking this model right here. So I have GPT-5 mini. And I'm going to open up the chat, and I'm going to paste in my question, which is list the tools the author of this article built with his approach. And I would expect, jumping back into the article, that he's going to mention Stavrobot and Middle and Sleight of Hand and what the names of those tools actually are. And also, this is not something that like generally available that the LLM could know based on its own training, right? So this is something that it actually has to research. All right, so let's send this and just see what happens. So I'm going to send the message. And now it responded, and I'm going up here, and now it says, I searched the linked article and read it. The author, which is correct, lists several tools he has built using his LLM-based approach. They are Lab M8, Scap, Scaffold, Log SH, Get Together, STWO, Craft. If you want, I can copy the article and so on. And you can see that based on the number, or the names rather, of these specific tools, these are not at all the ones that he is mentioning right here, right? And I think these are not even mentioned, the specific terms that he is mentioning right here. Let's just search for STWO on that article page, and this is something, as you can see in the bottom left corner of my search that I conducted here, is not something that he even mentions in that specific article, right? So this is a perfect example. Let me just look for the next one, Lab M8. This is also not even mentioned once in that article, right? So it basically straight out lied and hallucinated about having read that specific article. So this can get pretty dangerous, right? So giving a agent, right? Giving an agent access to the web is therefore quite important. So there are multiple ways how you can approach this, and I'm going to try to shed some light into all of these different kinds of approaches because it can get a little confusing. Now, the first thing that I would like to do is, first of all, I'm going to disconnect the model that I have added at the very top right here, so the GPT-5 mini one, and I'm going to connect now the chat model connector, as you can see, with the very first box right here, and this is an approach where we are going to take care of LLM built-in web access features from a specific model. And I'm going to just drag and drop it to the according model right here. And when I open this up, the model node right here, then first of all, this is the exact same node that I just used at the very top, right, at the very beginning. So this is connected to my OpenAI account, and the model that I'm now using again is GPT-5 mini. However, this time what I'm using is the responses API, and this is fairly new. I mean, new in AI terms is obviously something that can get old quite quickly. However, within this so-called responses API, there are some built-in tools, and you can already see that one of those built-in tools is a web search. So if I delete this again, I'm going to deactivate. So this is what it would look like per default, and if I activate this again, then this is giving me a selection of built-in tools that I can select from, and one of them is actually the web search. So if I click on this, then I can also, select the context size, if you will. So if it was supposed to be low, medium, or high, we're not going to worry about that too much for now. But this is actually a native web search function from the specific responses API built into the LLM node, into the model node itself, right? So if I close this again, then this green box right here are those which have built into the model connector, as you can see here, this web search functionality, and this can get a little confusing, especially with the upcoming boxes that we're going to take a look at. All right, so let's repeat the question again, and I'm going to reset the chat session, and I'm going to paste in the same prompt again, and now I have connected it to this specific model, and let's just see what happens now. I'm going to send it. And now it's done, and now you can actually see here are the projects the author says he built with his LLM-driven approach, and now you can see the names Stavrobot, middle, sleight of hand, and if we jump back into the article, then these are exactly the terms that he's mentioning on that specific article's page, right? So Stavrobot, middle, and so on. All right, so this has indeed worked, and it can be that easy, right? So you would just need to, jumping back into the LLM node right here, just need to activate this responses API within that specific node. Now, the problem with this approach is that this is an OpenAI specific feature, right? So this is not something that LLMs in general offer, but not only is this specific to OpenAI itself, but it's also specific to n8n, because if I scroll down a little, and this is the reason why I put the competitors in not within this box, but outside of them, because if I was able to, or if I would switch from this very model, the OpenAI model, to the next one, let's use Gemini for this. And again, obviously, if you're looking for the chat models, then you would just click on the connector, and then you can choose from a variety of providers. And the one that I chose now is Gemini, right? So these are all the popular models, the most popular models currently. And if I click on this, double click on this, then you can see that there is actually not this specific option that we have just chosen within the OpenAI node, so this is different. So this is like a native integration of n8n to make this responses API accessible to us as users, but this only counts for the OpenAI node, right? So for the OpenAI model. And yeah, so as you can see, we have the credentials, we can select the model, but even within the options right here, there's no such thing as use built-in tools or use web search or anything like this. So this is not the way to go with these models. And the same thing goes for Anthropic, so if I open the Anthropic node, then if you can also see that this also is connected to my Anthropic account, then I can also choose the model, but also here within the options, I don't have the ability to select something like web search or built-in tools or anything like this. Now, even with OpenRouter, and you might be familiar with OpenRouter, and I've done a couple of videos about the specific approach, which basically offers you to access all the LLMs that are out there just by using one interface, just by being connected to OpenRouter itself, and then you have access to several different kinds of models. And if I open this up, then this again is also connected to the OpenRouter, to my OpenRouter account, and then within the models you can see that I have actually access to all the models that are out there. But again, also within this option there is not something like web search or built-in tools or anything like this, especially since this depends also on the tool itself. Right? But as you can see, currently at the time of this recording, the OpenAI node is the only one that offers this functionality within the LLM node itself, right? So within the model connection, if I zoom into this, within the chat model right here. Now, within the next box, or within the same box actually, is also another tool, another provider, if you will. And I have made a specific dedicated video about this very provider, which is called Groq. And this is Groq with a Q, not with a K. And if you're looking for speed in regards to LLM responses, then this might be the way for you to go. I, as I've mentioned, have created a dedicated video about this. It's not about this right now. But what this actually offers, what Groq also offers, and I'm going to connect this to Groq right now, is if I open this up, then you can see that this also looks like as if we don't have access to any additional features, any additional options, so there's not something like built-in tools or web search again, but I have access to the models that are offered from Groq itself. And again, if you want to know more about this, then check out the video. And they have a, I wouldn't call it model itself, because it's more like a compounding system, if you will, which consists not only of a variety of different models that it's able to access, but it also accesses the web features, right? So the capability. So if I go to Groq.com, and then I'm going to look for the actual endpoint, and I'm going to show you this in a second. And I'm now within the API docs, and if I jump to the models right here, then you can see that there is a featured system, if you will, which is called Groq Compound. And if I click on this, then you can see amongst the capabilities that this specific system has, it's not a model per se, then one of those is to also support web search, so by connecting to this specific system, to this model, and quote unquote, then you already have access as well, web access as well. So if I go back into n8n, and if I connect it to my agent again, and I'm going to ask the same question. So I'm just going to say list the tools again. Then this is now done, and you can see also it's not as nicely formatted as the previous one, but this also gives us the tool name. It says tool name. Let me just see if I can drag this over a little so that you can see better. Then this also mentions Stavrobot, then middle and sleight of hand, and so on and so forth. So this has definitely worked as well. And now here you can see that within this green box that these are ways how you can give web access to your web AI or to your AI agents within n8n just by connecting the model. So as you can see, I have not used the tool connector right here, so it's basically built into the model itself. All right, so this is the first approach. Now, to make things even more confusing, as you've seen, we have the OpenAI model node where we are able to access the built-in tools. However, Anthropic and Gemini do also offer these kinds of tools. However, they are not to be found within their according model nodes, as we have just seen, right? However, if we access the tools connectors right here, and if I was to look for Gemini again, and the same goes for Anthropic, if I was to look for Anthropic, then I have access to their according tools, and I have listed both of them in this purple box right here. So if now I use the tool connector right here and not the model connector, if I click on this, then I'm able to access them. So if I drag and drop this to the tools right here, then I'm able to connect them. And if I click on this one, then you can see this is also connected to my Anthropic account. I'm going to leave the tool description as is, also the resource and operation, also the model itself. I can't use the model that I want, but if I scroll down a little more, then you can see that within the options hidden behind the drop down right here, and I'm going to delete this for a second just to see where this is hidden within this drop down right here. You can see that amongst all the different options, I also have the web search max users, allowed domains, and so on and so forth. So there are even multiple options that give me web access, right? So if I click on any of these, then I need to activate it once again. And now I am actually equipping this specific agent with the Anthropic web search as well, with one of the built-in tools, if you will. But it's now, and I'm going to close this, it's now connected via the tools with the Anthropic account and not via the chat model node. Now, the same approach can be achieved with using Gemini instead of Anthropic. So if I delete the connection to the Anthropic tool right here, and I'm going to select the Gemini tool right here, and I'm going to open up the subnode, then first of all, again, this is connected to my credentials, automatically selected the tool description. The resource is going to be text. Operation is also message a model. And then here again, I can choose from the models that I want to interact with. And then again, you can choose this to your liking if you want to use the chat input variable, which is coming from the chat itself, or if you want to use the let the model define parameter option, which also gives you basically just the ability to let the agent decide what the input of the specific tool should be. In this case, again, if you scroll down to the bottom right here, then let me just delete this so that you can see what it looks like. You also have the built-in tools from the Gemini tool right here. And in this dropdown, you can also see that we have the Google search, and then you would basically just activate the Google search. And this is also another option which works exactly like the Anthropic one. So again, just as a recap, you can see that in Anthropic's and Gemini's case or Google's case, we wouldn't use the responses API or an equivalent to this, but we would use dedicated tools that are also available in these specific models, but we would need to connect them via the tools. Let's just quickly check this and see how it works. So I would also just paste the prompt in right here and run it, and let's just see if this works as well. And now this is done as well, and here you can again see this is calling out middle and then also an alternative to OpenClaw. And if we jump back into the article, then this is actually the alternative to OpenClaw, and then we have middle mentioned as well. All right, so this has worked as well. All right, now as you can see, these are quite convenient way how we can give web access to our agents, right? However, the problem with this obviously is that we are bound to the specific models, right? So these are all proprietary models that offer this specific capability of using their built-in tools, which kind of limits us in regards to choosing a different model or a model that we would like to use instead. So a more LLM agnostic approach would therefore be to use third-party tools. And if I zoom in here and you see, take a look at the first blue block right here called third party, there are a couple of familiar names probably that you have might already have heard of. And the first one is a SerpAPI. And if I jump onto their site, then they are positioning themselves as a Google Search API. To connect them with your AI agent within n8n is quite easy because first of all, there's a dedicated node for this. And by the way, this would also use, or this would also be using the tool functionality, right? So if I disconnect the Gemini tool right here, and if I look for a SerpAPI via the tool node, then you can see that there's a SerpAPI official tool, and this is the one that we would need to work with. And if I jump into their settings, then you can see that I would also connect this with my credentials to the SerpAPI account. Then there are all these familiar settings, and within the search query, I would just do the same as I have done before, which is that I'm going to use this button right here, which is called let the model define this parameter again. So if I close this back again, and I'm going to drag and drop the connector to the SerpAPI subnode right here, and to finish this up, I have a dashboard right here, and if I jump into this, then this is where you would get your API key, you know, so this is quite simple. Now, in regards to the pricing, it's definitely worth considering this option because they do offer a free plan. However, this basically only gives you 250 searches per month, right? And so this is not even one search per day. And depending on your specific use case, this might be enough, right? But you might want to upgrade. However, to be completely fair, I don't think the pricing is that interesting in that regard. There are better alternatives, and we're going to take a look at this. However, at the end of the day, it will give you access to all of these tools, which might also be interesting, and especially also to the Google Search API. And it's fairly simple to connect with them. And in addition to that, they do have a dedicated node, right? So this might be an option for you. Now, a competitor to SerpAPI is called Tavily, and if you jump onto their website, then you can already see how they are positioning themselves, which is to connect your AI agents to the web, right? So it's exactly what we are looking for. And jumping back into n8n, they also have a dedicated node. So if I look for Tavily in the tool section, then you can see that there is a Tavily tool. And if I connect this to my agent right here, and if I open up the options, then again, everything can stay as is, all the same options that you are used to. You have the credentials, and then you have a tool description, resource, and operations. And again, in regards to the query, so where should this query actually be coming from? Again, I have used this button right here, which is called from AI, and then it's going to input the query that the agent will define. So what is it is going to be the actual search term at the end of the day, and that's already it in that regard. And then in regards to the pricing as well, they have a different approach. So you would basically, so first of all, they do have a free plan as well, which gives you 1,000 API credits per month at least. So that's double, or actually 4 times the one that SerpAPI offers. I will have to double check, to be honest. Yeah, so they have 250 searches, and Tavily offers you 1,001. And then after this, you would pay as you go, right? So depending on the amount that you need to spend, this depends on your specific use case, and yeah, so that's a different approach in that regard. Let's also just quickly check if these options work as well. So this is already connected to my Tavily account. I'm going to reset the chat session, and I'm going to paste in the same prompt that we have used so far. I'm going to send it, and let's just see what happens. And now this is done as well. Tools built with an LLM-driven development workflow. This is what the response was. And then it's mentioning Stavrobot, voice note taker, business site, and everything else that was mentioned in the article as well. All right, so this has worked great as well. Let me just refresh the page, and then we are going to take a look into the next one, which is the Brave Search API. And this is quite interesting, actually, because the Brave Search API is not necessarily meant for AI agents alone, but actually a API that they offer in general. And but this is something that we can first of all use as well, obviously, and then in addition to this, there is also a dedicated Brave Search tool that we can use and connect our agents to. So if I'm looking for the tools and I'm looking for Brave, then you can see that I find the Brave Search tool, and this is what I've done here. And if I click into this, then you can see again this is connected to my credentials. Tools description was set automatically, and then the operation is a web search. And this is also quite interesting because you can also choose from the different varieties of offers that they have in regards to the sections that they also offer. So you can look for news specifically, you can conduct an image search, so everything that you would be used to. And in Brave itself, you would just need to create an account, obviously. Then you have access to your API keys, and they even offer a free plan. And if we take a look into their pricing, checking out the available plans right here, then this is giving you $5 per 1,000 requests, but they include basically a free $5 tier in for every month, right? That you can use and that you can use your credits for, and especially compared to SerpAPI, this is an interesting offer because it gives you basically 1,000 requests that you can use. Now, there are very similar services that you can also use, and this is the reason why I've put them into a second blue third-party block, if you will. And the reason for separating both of these is that, judging by the name you might already be familiar with, is that these are actually from the LLM realm itself, right? Because if you're familiar with Ollama, I'm going back onto the Ollama site right now, and if I open their main page, then you can access all the open weight models that are out there via OpenLlama, right? And you would need to self-host them, so this is a major difference between something like OpenRouter, for instance, but it gives you access to all the models that are basically out there, which are open source or open weight, right? And this is interesting because it gives you a lot more freedom, right? And also in regards to data privacy, this might be something worth considering. Now, Ollama itself also offers a Web Search API. So I'm now within the Ollama docs, as you can see. And within their documentation and their capabilities, they give you a web search tool that you can use, which has its own dedicated API endpoint. And connecting to API endpoints is something quite basic within n8n, something that you can do quite easily. And what you need for this would just be to use the HTTP request node or HTTP request subnode in this regard. So what you want to look for, and I'm going to cut the connection to the Brave search right here, is to look for HTTP request, and this is even one of the most popular ones, right? And if I open this up, then you can see that this is basically giving me, first of all, a short description so that the agent knows what this tool is supposed to do. And then you have a couple of settings, and one of the most important things is to have the URL. And judging by the URL, you can already see that this is actually now connected to the Ollama Web Search API, which is exactly the one that we have just taken a look at, right? And to use this is actually quite simple because, again, you would just need to have a query, so a search query, right? So what would be the input of that online search? And other than that, you can use a maximum results, and then you would basically get that response back. So jumping back into n8n, this is all there is to set this up. So you would need to have your authentication, obviously. Again, you would need to create an account on Ollama, then enter your Bearer API key in this HTTP node. But when I scroll down, then you can see that within the body right here, I have chosen to use a JSON body, obviously, and then to use the specific fields below that I have defined. And these are actually the ones from the Ollama Web Search API documentation, right? So the name is going to be query, and then again, in regards to the value, what's the query actually going to look like? And again, I'm just going to let the model define this, right? And this is exactly what we need to have to use this endpoint right here. And that's already it. So there's nothing left to do. And again, this already also gives you a lot more freedom in regards to using the model that you want to use, right? Now, this has nothing to do with the Ollama or the main offer or the main product or solution that Ollama offers, right? So this is maybe something that you can consider like a dedicated service of them. Now, in regards to the pricing, Ollama at the time of this recording has not set a hard pricing plan or a pricing limit for this specific feature because it's a relatively new feature. From what I found out and from my research, they are claiming that they have around 100 searches per day that you can currently use for free. So this is a relatively interesting pricing model, right? But we will have to see how this emerges in the future. But at the time of this recording, this is definitely a very attractive solution. Now, jumping back into n8n, so you now know how to connect this one. Very similar to this is some option or an option that ZAI offers. If you're not familiar with ZAI, if I go onto this site right here called Artificial Analysis AI, and then I'm scrolling down to the section where it says open weights versus proprietary, then you can see that one, and by the way, the proprietary models are the black ones, the open weights are the blue ones, and the currently best model in regards to intelligence is called GLM5, and this is like the flagship model of ZAI. So they are the company behind this model right here, and this ZAI actually offers something very similar, and you can see this from their docs. So I'm on the ZAI website, and I jumped into the API reference docs, as you can see, and they also offer a web search API endpoint that you can use. And the way you would connect this one is just exactly the same as with the Ollama one, right? So if I jump into n8n, then you can see that this is also connected via the HTTP request node. So you would just connect it like so, and then within the settings, if I jump into this, then you can see that this also is connected to the ZAI endpoint, right? API endpoint for the specific web search. And you have a couple of authorization settings. Again, obviously you would need this, and then there are more settings that you can use, but you will get everything in regards to that information out of the API docs. But again, you would also use the body for to define the search engine, first of all, and then second of all, in regards to the search query, which is obviously also a required field. This is something that you can use, and you have the search query parameter that you can use within the body section right here of this manual HTTP request. And again, this also is just a usual HTTP request node, right? So you would basically have to build this manually yourself once, but at the end of the day, you can use this all the time. And the functionality is basically the same or very similar to the one that you see in Ollama. All right, now as for the last part, which I've also put in a blue box called scraping, because it's also, using a third-party provider, if you will, which is not from the LLM realm in that regard that it's a built-in tool, but rather a third-party service as well. But the approach is kind of different. And the first thing is that you use a very blank, if you will, like a specific HTTP request node to, look for a specific URL that you would want to scrape. So imagine that you are using this article that we have talked about, right, as the actual input for this specific request. And this is actually the only free way that we have in this list right here that you can use, and that enables you to conduct a web search yourself, if you will, or let the agent do that itself. Because what this does, if I jump into this, only requires is just the URL, right? So if I use a HTTP request node, and let me just use a root node for this. So there's also a root node which is called HTTP request, which is different from the tool, right? Remember, the tools are different in that regard that they are supposed to be connected to an agent, but the HTTP request node is also a dedicated root node within n8n that you can use without any AI involvement or AI agent involvement, right? So if I click on this, then you can see that this is completely empty. And if I use the URL from the specific article and I put this in this URL field right here and I leave everything as is and I execute the step, then you can see on the right-hand side that I actually do get the complete site, right? So everything that you can see from this site, so including the heading, including the date, including the images, everything that you can imagine right inside my n8n flow, right? And I get all of this data, and you might see the scroll bar, right, that it's actually quite a lot of information that I'm able to access right now. And I've just basically scraped this site, if you will, using the specific HTTP request node. And the problem with this approach is, first of all, that this has to, you would basically need to know the URL that you are trying to get information out of, right? And depending on your specific use case, this might be not the best case scenario. However, if you do know the URL, then this might be extremely interesting. In addition to this, there is one more caveat that we need to be aware of, which is that if you are using it the way I just did, which is just putting in the URL and then trying to scrape it, then this might work sometimes, as we have just seen, but sometimes it might not, because sites and pages and browsers even and platforms are aware sometimes of the value of the information they provide, so they basically block bots, right? So they block automatically scraped content approaches, right? Content scraping approaches out of the box, and this will basically give you an error message, so you are not able to access the content of the specific site, right? So this is something that we need to be aware of, but at the end of the day, it still might be useful for your specific case to just conduct this research yourself, or the online search yourself. Now, another approach is also related to, using third-party providers again, and they are more related to scraping again, but at the end of the day, getting information out of a website is scraping at the end of the day. So this still might be a solution for you. And I have looked for a specific tool that you can use for this, which is called Apify. And I have a dedicated tutorial, by the way, if you want to know how to use Apify, how powerful it actually is, because I personally use it on a daily basis. And again, if I click on the tools right here and I look for Apify, then you can also see that there's a dedicated Apify tool for this, so a native tool that we can use within n8n. And if I jump onto this, then I have a couple of settings, and jumping onto the platform itself of Apify, there is an Apify store, right, which gives you access to all kinds of scraping tools that you can imagine to get data from, almost any platform that you can imagine. Currently, I think they have around 20,000 different actors. I'm not sure. Yeah, almost 20,000 different actors, as you can see right here, and you can basically scrape any platform you like. Now, apart from scraping platforms, like Instagram or LinkedIn or Facebook, you can also, if you look for web, get the content from websites in general, and there are, I would say, 2 to 3 interesting scrapers. The first one is called Website Content Crawler, the next one is called Web Scraper, and the third one is called RAG Web Browser. And these are all maintained and created by Apify itself. Apify works in a way that there are independent developers that are able to build scrapers and then offer them as a dedicated so-called actor on the Apify platform. But Apify itself also offers this opportunity. And if I jump back into n8n, and I'm now within the Apify subnode again, then this is again connected to my account. Then we have the usual settings of tool description, resource, and operation. And then in regards to the source, which actor do I want to use? I can then look for the actors that I have within my account, right? So if I was to look for a web, then this is going to list the RAG web browser, the content crawler, and so on and so forth. So exactly the ones that I have looked for in this section. And they also give you information, they basically also extract information from websites, right? From web pages. The last thing that is called Firecrawl. So this is also a dedicated service, and I'm going on the Firecrawl website right here. And this is also related to, again, scraping itself, and it works exactly the same way. So this is a third-party provider, and you would just create your API key for this, then you would copy this into n8n. And again, here you also have within the tools section a native Firecrawl tool, which is this one. So if I jump into these settings, again, this is connected to my credentials, then I'm going to select the operation of scrape, and then in regards to which URL is supposed to be scraped, right, which URL do you want to get the information out of, then I have used, again, the parameter of let the model define this parameter in regards to the query, right? So if I pass on the URL or the prompt that I have just used the whole time in our chat example, then it would basically use that URL itself, right? The agent would put this specific URL into the according field right here, and then this would enable the Firecrawl platform to get the information out of the specific site. Right. All right. So this is already it. As you can see, this has gotten quite comprehensive because there are very many tools that offer this feature. There are some caveats we need to be aware of, and some pros, some cons. There is a completely free way, as you have seen, but even with the third-party providers, there are free plans, and every tool that we have just taken a look at, and even every LLM takes a different approach. So we need to be aware of what our specific use case would be the best for this. Right. So I hope this was helpful. Let me know in the comments if this was helpful to you. Thanks a lot for your attention, and hope to see you in the next one. See ya. Bye.